Hello, Disney fans. A slightly belated Happy New Year. It's still January, so the year's still new, I would say. New Year's is a time when everybody talks about how to improve themselves, how to make a new them. And I thought, what more perfect movie to start off the new year than The Emperor's New Groove? This is a movie that gets overlooked a fair bit by Disney fans. And it's certainly not because it's a bad movie. It is hilarious, it's very enjoyable to watch, but I think the reason it's overlooked so much is it doesn't look or feel like a Disney movie. This isn't your classic fairy tale, this isn't what you think of when you think of eras like the Disney Renaissance. It isn't a movie it isn't traditionally the Disney style, I guess would be the best way to say it. But that's okay. Disney got out of their groove a little bit, and it's good to do that sometimes, right?
No! You threw off my groove.
I'm sorry, but you've thrown off the Emperor's groove.
Okay, so maybe there are people like Cusco who don't want their groove thrown off. Although, those are usually the people who need a new groove. He's about to get his new groove. Cusco is, of course, the main character in this story. If you've already seen this, you know that, of course, and if you haven't, warning for spoilers, although that's pretty unavoidable in a review. But Cusco is about to get his new groove thanks to Yzma and her henchman Kronk. Kronk is pretty much, I won't say the most funny thing about this because there's a lot of funny things in this movie, but he's pretty up there. And I love his character introduction along with Yzma's. Yzma's been trying to run the kingdom behind Cusco's back, and he's not going to allow that. So he fires her, and Kronk's reaction afterwards, his total obliviousness, is hilarious.
Oh, who's in my chair?
I know. Yzma. Yzma's in your chair, right?
Very good, Kronk. Here, get this snack.
Got it.
Kronk is one of those characters who's known as a minion with an F in evil. He works for the villain, but he's not evil himself. And they usually make for awesome comedy. And Kronk is an especially wonderful example of that. He's voiced by Patrick Warburton, who is a pretty well-known voice actor. Yzma is voiced by Eartha Kitt, who's an absolute legend, but people from my generation might not know her quite as well as people from my mom's generation. I grew up loving a lot of the same things my mom loved. And one of the shows she grew up with was the 1960s era Batman, where Eartha Kitt was one of three actresses to play the role of Catwoman.
Now, would I do a thing like that?
Eartha Kitt brought so much fun to the role she played. Well, of course, Yzma's going to be the one to set things in motion and start Cusco on a path that's going to get him thinking a little bit differently here. But in the meantime, Cusco's not worried about her or anything else. He thinks the world revolves around him. Probably literally knowing him. Well, at the moment, his main concern is finding out where the best sunlight hits a certain hilltop, because he's going to wipe out that village and build his dream estate there, Cuscotopia.
Welcome to Cuscotopia, my ultimate summer getaway, complete with water slide.
What?
Isn't it great? It's my birthday gift to me.
Pacha, the villager he's telling about all this, is voiced by John Goodman. You know, if a character is voiced by John Goodman, you're probably gonna like that character. I can only think of one instance where John Goodman played a villain, although he may have in a movie I haven't heard of, but 99 times out of 100, John Goodman's going to play a good guy, and Potts is definitely a likable character. He is broken-hearted over the loss of what he thinks is going to be the loss of his village because his family's lived there for generation after generation. Now he's supposed to go home and tell his family that they're gonna lose everything they've ever had. Well, he's angry as well as broken-hearted, but he isn't going to be doing things to the extent that Yzma is. Yzma actually comes up with a plan to poison Cusco. Well, they're going to the secret lab to get the poison, and this leads to probably the best known, one of the two best known clips in this movie. It gets a laugh every time.
Pull the lever, Kronk.
Gotta love that. Disney is awesome at making frightening villains, of course. But every so often, you need a change of pace, and you need a villain who you laugh at rather than fear. And Yzma is the perfect example of that. Well, they try to poison Cusco. Only thing is, the different potions that Yzma has get mixed up, thanks to Kronk. Well, really not his fault. They weren't labeled the best. But instead of being dead, Cusco goes through a transformation. And this leads to some more comedy when Yzma's trying to tell Kronk how to take him out since the potion isn't working.
That's gonna be tough.
More broccoli?
Because you're, I don't know, let's face it, you're no spring chicken. And I mean that in the best possible way.
What? A llama? He's supposed to be dead!
I especially love the spiral animation on Cusco's eyes after Kronk knocks him out. It reminds a person almost of like your old time cartoons. I'm talking really old time, like 1930s era when a character would get knocked out, they'd have something like that. Like I said, this isn't your traditional Disney animation. Or it isn't your classic Disney animation, I should say. It's not what you expect when you look to a Disney movie. But that doesn't make it any less fun to watch. Well, Kronk is given the task of finishing the job. Instead, he bungles it, and Cusco ends up in a bag on Patch's cart.
Hi, excuse me. 2 seconds here. I'm the one in the car, remember? This story's about me, not him. Okay, you got it? All right, we're gonna move ahead. Sorry to slow you down.
That adds so much to the humor of this movie, how often they break the fourth wall. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, breaking the fourth wall is when a character acknowledges the fact there's an audience out there and they're in a fictional world. This isn't like, say, a story written in first person where it could be someone writing their memoirs for someone to read later or something like that. This is a character openly acknowledging that there is an audience out there at the moment watching them. This movie not only breaks the fourth wall, it takes the little shards that are left and then smashes them. And like I said, that adds a lot to the humor in this. It's not something you see in a Disney movie. It shakes things up. It's a little bit unexpected, which helps add to the humor, but the way the characters talk when they do it also adds hilariously to it. It shows Cusco's character every time he does it, and it's one of the things people remember most about this film. Well, Cusco wakes up in the sack, finds out he's been turned into a llama, and wants Pacha to take him back to the palace, thinking that Yzma will undo whatever was done to him, not realizing that, of course, who's the one that does magic? Obviously, she's the one who transformed him. But nobody thinks that far. Well, Pacha at least warns him you don't want to go out into that jungle. It's dangerous out there. There are jaguars, there's other predators. You're not going to live long if you go out there. But Pacha tells him at first he won't help him unless Cusco agrees to not build Cuscotopia. Cusco isn't going to agree to that and ends up in a big mess of trouble.
No, 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 don't.
In the squirrel's defense, Cusco wasn't exactly nice to him. You gotta love that popping the balloon didn't wake up the jaguars. Cusco laughing did. I also love the detail that the squirrel's name is Bucky, for obvious reasons, since my pony's name is Bucky. Well, Pacha, being the good guy that he is, he's not gonna let Cusco face the jungle alone. He shows up just in time to rescue him. Mostly. He gets him away from the jaguars, but they end up in even more, well, not more, but they end up in another dangerous predicament. This is another one of the moments from the movie that is best remembered, one that's quoted the most often, and it's also the one that gets the most laughs, I think.
Uh-oh. Don't tell me. We're about to go over a huge waterfall. Yep. Sharp rocks at the bottom? Most likely. Bring it on.
David Spade is the voice of Cusco, and it's his deadpan delivery of that line that really adds to the humor of it. I mean, it'd be funny on its own, but just the way he says it. I didn't know a lot about David Spade until recently, but it turns out he's also a stand-up comedian, so of course he has good comic timing, a good idea of how to deliver a line like that. And he was also on Saturday Night Live. I do love Saturday Night Live, but I was never really into it all that much until they started to make fun of a certain person who was in charge between 2016 and 2020. I am so grateful for the humor that got us through those times. Well, of course, they survived going over the waterfall. Wouldn't be a comedy if you kill off the hero that way. Although, is Cusco? Yeah, I guess we'll call Cusco the hero. He's the protagonist anyway, mostly. So, they survive going over the waterfall and they agree to work together because Cusco pretends that he's going to spare Pacha's village in exchange. Well, the truth comes out when they cross a dangerous bridge together and Pacha falls through the boards.
Hands on it! You know, the funny thing about shaking hands is you need hands. Okay. Bye-bye.
Of course, they end up saving each other again, and Cusco actually saves Pacha's life when he could have just let him drop, when his own life wouldn't have depended on it at that point. That's when Cusco kind of starts to realize, yeah, he maybe needs to do some changing here. Pacha, being the good guy that he is, still agrees to take Cusco back to the palace, even though he knows Cusco's probably gonna go back on the arrangement at this point. He doesn't think Cusco's going to change his mind, but he says 4 days that it'll take him to get there. That's a long enough time that maybe Cusco might start to change, and he really does believe that Cusco has good in him. Well, 4 days is kind of a long trip, and Cusco starts to get hungry. Of course, you wouldn't, they've been on the road a while. And this gives us another hilarious scene where they dress Cusco up as Pats's wife to get into the restaurant. And nobody questions that Pats's wife is a llama.
We'll have two specials. Is that all right, dear?
Oh, whatever you say, Pumpkin. You know what I like.
We're on our honeymoon.
Bless you for coming out in public.
Here's some fun trivia. Of course, this movie's set during the Incan Empire. During that time, there actually were restaurants set up along the road where people would stop and grab a bite, pretty much the same as anybody would stop at a fast food place while they were on a road trip today. I don't know what kind of food would have been served, whether it would have been your typical family meal or something more hurried, but I'm guessing they didn't use diner talk like what Kronk obviously knows.
And on the side, 2 chili cheese samplers, a basket of liver and onion rings, a catch of the day, and a steak cut in the shape of a trout. You got all that, honey?
3 oysters wearing pants, plate of hot air, basket of grandma's breakfast, and change the bull to a gill. Got it.
Not only is this amazingly funny, it also makes perfect sense. Kronk loves to cook. Of course he knows diner slang. That's one of those little character moments that show why you gotta love Kronk. In fact, he was loved well enough by fans to get his own movie. And of course, he's in the series that was a spin-off of this movie, The Emperor's New School. So, for being overlooked as a Disney movie, the fact that it has a sequel and a series shows that, yeah, this movie does have a pretty great fan base. While Kronk is mixed up in working at the diner, Pacha realizes Yzma's there. Well, he saw Kronk first, which leads him to know that Yzma's there, and he knows Kuzco's in danger when he overhears what they're talking about. He tries to warn Kuzco, but of course Kuzco doesn't believe him.
What are you doing?
There's 2 people in there looking for you. What? A big guy and a skinny old woman.
Wait, was this woman scary beyond all reason?
Oh, yeah.
That's Eastman and Kronk. I'm safe.
It's lucky for Kuzco that he overhears Yzma and Kronk talking before they see him, and he finds out Pacha was right. By then, Pacha's walked off and he doesn't know where he is. Kuzco spends the night alone in the rain, and this leads to where the movie began, with Kuzco narrating what happened to him. And normally, a character addressing the narrator is played for laughs, but oddly enough, in such a comedic film, this is the one scene that's played seriously.
So, this is where you came in. See, just like I said, I'm the victim here. I didn't do anything, and they ruined my life and took everything I had. Hey, give it a rest up there, will ya?
Well, that old saying is true. Things look brighter in the morning. And come morning, Kuzco realizes Pacha is going to stick by him. Pacha actually followed him, found out where he went. They reunite, and Pacha is going to take him back to the palace after they stop home to Pacha's home to get a few supplies. On the way there, they find out Yzma and Kronk have beaten them to Pacha's home.
Hey there, Pacha. Hey, you just missed your relatives. My relatives?
Yeah, we just sent them up to your house.
What did they look like?
Well, you see, there was this big guy and this older woman who was, well, how would you describe her?
Hey, scary beyond all reason.
Yeah, that's it.
That's another great joke, is Yzma being scary beyond all reason. That's what's known as a brick joke, a joke that's funny because they keep bringing it up. Now, Pacha's family is smart enough to know don't trust these two, and they're able to stay safe until Pacha comes back and warns them what's going on. His wife doesn't exactly take meeting Cusco in llama form very well.
Get back to the palace, find the lab, and change him back.
Hi there.
That was him.
Again, the animation for this is not typical Disney. It's almost more Looney Tunes, but it is still. I mean, you can't help laughing seeing those llamas flying around Cusco's head and seeing him whammed like that. Cusco and Pacha take off for the palace, and his family's going to give them a head start by delaying Yzma and Kronk as much as they can. Cusco rightfully asked Pacha, aren't you a little worried leaving your family with these two? Are they going to be okay? I mean, for Cusco to be worried about Pacha's family's safety, that says something already about his character development. But what makes this funny is Pacha knows his family is more than capable of handling these two.
What to do? Right, Mom? Okay, children. On your mark, get set, go!
This is followed by a chase scene that's very cartoony. Again, not what you expect from Disney. but it's still fun to watch. They even leave a dotted trail behind them, and you can see like different dashes representing Cusco and Patch's path as opposed to Kronk and Yzma's path. And there's almost a Coyote and Roadrunner aspect to when they're getting back to the palace. The way that Yzma and Kronk are delayed, and yet even though logically Cusco and Patch should have been way ahead of them, Eastman Crack still beat them back to the palace. And they even point out in the movie that this makes no sense at all.
No, it can't be. How did you get back here before us?
How did we, Kronk?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
They get out of this by using all the different animal potions to try to escape Yzma while getting the potion that will turn Cusco back into a human. I wish I could show all of that sequence, but there are so many funny moments in this that you can't show them all. You have to watch the movie itself to see all the comical moments because there is really no break in the comedy. It is one awesome, hysterical moment after another. It ends with Yzma turned into a cat, which is especially funny given, like I said before, that Eartha Kitt played Catwoman.
Is that my voice? Is that my voice? Oh well.
Of course, they have to get the potion to make you human again away from Yzma and get it to Cusco. Yzma and the potion both end up falling off the building, and the way this is solved is the most random way possible, which adds to the humor.
For the last time, we did not order a giant trampoline. You know, pal, you could have told me that before I set it up.
For a few seconds, it looks like Yzma's actually going to win. On the way back up, she catches the vial of potion that will turn her back into a human. But she made one big mistake. She insulted Crank before, and worse yet, she insulted his cooking. That makes him finally turn on her. She sent him down through a trap door, but the trap door led to a pretty convenient place.
I win.
Whoa.
I win.
Whoa.
Of course, Cusco's able to get the potion, drink it, and turn back into his human self. And we see that he really has changed. This gives us two nice heartwarming moments. The first is when he talks to Rudy, the guy who he threw out of the window before.
You stop being so hard on yourself. All is forgiven.
You're sure?
Oh, it's not the first time I was tossed out a window, and it won't be the last. What can I say? I'm a rebel.
The reason I wanted to point Rudy out was he was voiced by John Fiedler. John Fiedler had quite an acting career in quite a few movies, but he's probably best known to Disney fans as the voice of Piglet. Rudy was his last role, although this wasn't his last screen credit. John Fiedler would play Rudy one more time in Kronk's New Groove, reprising the role. Kind of indicates he had fun doing it, and I think from what I've heard, he would have been the type of actor who enjoyed staying active. So a little bit of nostalgia there. Well, the second heartwarming moment that I was referring to is, of course, when Cusco acknowledges that he's not going to destroy Patch's village.
So, you lied to me.
I did?
Yeah. You said when the sun hits this ridge just right, these hills sing. Well, pal, I was dragged all over those hills and I did not hear any singing.
I love that Cusco does this in the most Cusco way possible. He's still Cusco, but he has changed. And it's clear after this that he's basically a member of Patch's family. We see them enjoying the resort that Cusco built on the hill next to Patch's. So they're neighbors now. And we also see what happened to Kronk and Yzma. Kronk is now the leader of what's basically a Boy Scout troop. They call it the Junior Chipmunks. And he does extremely well in that role because, he really is a sweet guy. He's not cut out to be an evil minion. And we see that Yzma doesn't get out of her form as a cat. She remains cute, yet vicious.
My acorn is missing.
Squeak, squeakin', squeak, squeakity.
Did you eat the acorn?
Squeaker, squeak, squeak, squeakin'.
You owe me a new acorn.
Squeak, 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 squeakers. Squeakin'.
I'm so proud of you guys.
That seemed like the perfect way to wrap up this movie. And before I wrap up this video, I wanted to give you a little bit of Disney trivia. This movie went through a lot of changes from when it was first thought of. The storyline was changed completely. And it would be interesting to see the movie they originally planned to make. I'm glad that we got the movie we got, but I can see them using the original concept in another movie later, although I can't see it being made without Eartha Kitt. Eartha Kitt was always intended to play the villain. And her original goal in the movie that would have been called Kingdom of the Sun was she was going to try to get rid of the sun because she blamed it for aging her. Because, of course, if there's no sunlight on your skin, of course, everybody knows your skin stays healthier. Kind of a logically arrived goal for a villain who wants to stay looking young, although that wasn't her goal in the movie we got, obviously. But it's a potentially interesting idea that I think they could have worked with. She recorded a great song for it called "Snuff Out the Light," and I'm going to include the link to that in the video description. You can check it out, listen to it if you want. Of course, Eartha Kitt was a brilliant singer, and it's almost a crime that she didn't get a song in this, although she does get one in Cronc's New Groove. Well, it's a duet, but still her singing. Cusco got its name from what was the capital of the Incan Empire, the city of Cusco, although that was spelled differently. I think it's interesting that they put that much, research into it. Obviously, this isn't meant to accurately portray Incan culture, but you could still tell they looked into some things and actually did do a little bit of research. All in all, even though this was a big change from the movie they planned to make, this is a really hidden gem of a Disney movie, and it is well worth watching. I couldn't even cover half of the hilarious moments in here. Because, like I said, it was one comedy gold moment after another. If you watched this movie already, give it a second viewing, and if you haven't, I really recommend giving it a chance. You might know the plot now, but there's still so many funny moments that I know you'll love. Have a happy and healthy 2022. Please, please stay careful and healthy. And until next time, remember the magic.